Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. You know, one question I ask every guest on Everyday Martial Artist is about their favorite martial arts book. And there's never been one quite like Martial Theory by Steve Perlman, described as the art of war for the martial arts. Martial Theory helps any martial artist or instructor take their understanding and teaching to the next level. And at martialtheoryu.com, you'll find a global community with instructor groups, Q&A with Steve, live events, and demonstrations to help you apply martial theory directly to your training. It's not just a book, it's a movement. Find Martial Theory on Amazon, and when you join martialtheoryu.com, use discount code EverydayMA for 20% off. That's under $20 a month for life. That's martialtheoryu.com, code EverydayMA. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts and other stuff they're involved in. My guest today is an educator, actor, director, and fight director whose work has helped shape the modern practice of stage combat in theater and performance training. He currently serves as a chair and professor for the Department of Theater at the University of Utah, where he trains actors not only in performance, but in the integration of movement, voice, and storytelling. Over the course of his career, he's taught workshops and masterclasses at universities across the U.S., sharing his approach to theatrical combat and actor training with students at institutions across the country. He's also spent more than 2 decades working with the renowned Oregon Shakespeare Festival, serving as a fight director, performer, and instructor on a wide range of productions from Shakespearean classics to modern works. His fight direction and performance work has been seen at leading regional theaters nationwide, and his influence extends through generations of actors and instructors working in stage combat and performance. A certified teacher and a certified fight director with the Society of American Fight Directors, as well as a master instructor and senior fight director with Dueling Arts International, he brings a deeply integrated approach to actor training that connects physical action, voice, and text. He's also the author of Stage Combat Arts, an integrated approach to acting, voice, and text work, a book that reflects his philosophy on the relationship between performance and physical storytelling. Please welcome my guest to the show today, Mr. Chris Duval. How you doing today, Chris?
Hey, thank you, Brian. Doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you. As I say to all my guests, I truly appreciate your time. I know how busy you can be, especially knowing that you teach at the university my son attends. I know how busy he is, so I can imagine you're even busier than him. So I truly appreciate the time, and I'm looking forward to learning more about you.
I look forward to chatting. It's a busy time for sure, but always a pleasure to do these kinds of things.
Good.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, what I do with all my guests, I mentioned, a background in Aikido and stuff, but I want to know where that first interest in martial arts came from. That, that first, whether it was like a movie, a TV show, you had a friend that joined, you just kind of that first spark that kicked off your martial arts journey.
Yeah, I was a young actor. I grew up in LA. I was a young actor there and was cast in a production of Cyrano de Bergerac.
Oh, cool.
At a theater in LA. And it was part of a youth organization, California Youth Theater. I was 18 years old and just in between high school and college. And we were working on this, production of Cyrano de Bergerac. A professional director got brought in and stuff. And we were working on this, and a renowned fight director, guy who's worked on just scores of Broadway productions and in the West End and just all over the world, a guy named B.H. Barry. They brought him in from New York, and he did the fights for us. And he had an experience in Aikido as a much younger man, and his fights are known for being, just very theatrical and just really exciting. And that was my first taste of stage combat and my first little taste of sort of what Aikido might be about. And So that's sort of how I got my start.
Wow.
I became very interested in storytelling through the art of stage combat, fights with sort of basically any type of sword and unarmed fights. Also a instructor of theatrical firearms. And so I became very interested in just learning more about that sort of martial discipline. And as I learned more about that martial discipline, I then got reacquainted with learning more about Aikido. I went to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival as an actor, and there was an Aikido dojo run by Shihan Michael Friedel, who's still my sensei.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
I started training there in 1999. And I thought, at the time, man, I wonder if I could get my black belt in a year or two, because I only had a year-long contract with the festival. And I quickly realized that getting a black belt in Aikido was going to take longer than a couple of years. Luckily, I was there for about 10 years, and I ended up testing for not too long after that, Nidan, second degree black belt. But that's basically where I got my start.
Wow. So when you found that first dojo, now was that the first actual martial arts dojo you had ever like walked into?
I had done a little bit of a couple of things earlier. I'd done a little karate, a little bit of a brand of Aikido,
Mm-hmm.
although it was really much more aligned with, I don't even know exactly what it was aligned with. It was not a style of Aikido I'm actually very familiar with since then. It wasn't even, I don't think even it was calling itself Aikido, but I don't actually know that that's really what it was doing.
I've seen that before. Yep.
So I've spent a couple of years, a couple of, classes in a couple of dojos, but no, it was the first time when I was in Ashland that I spent any serious time in a dojo.
So those first couple schools, whether it was the Aikido or the karate, why do you think, or maybe you know the reason or whatever, but why do you think they didn't stick, that you didn't stick with them longer?
The Aikido school that I went to, it was very rough. It was very like, you signed the waiver kind of culture a little bit in the dojo. It was a little bit like, if you dislocate a guy, I think while I was there, actually, I just dislocated someone's shoulder. It was just like a student in the first class or two. And I was like,
Yep.
oh, dude, sorry. So I was looking for something that was martially effective, that was martially sound, but that was a little bit more of a balance between hard and softer styles. So that's essentially what I had been looking for. And when I went to Aikido of Ashland, I found it. Shihan Friedel had a long history in Kempo karate, so he brought a lot of that influence into Aikido. So that was and continues to be, super interesting for me. But he also brought a lot of influence from sort of softer versions of Aikido, soft, but, obviously still, deeply effective.
Yeah.
And I found that sort of Aikido's sense of connecting with a partner and blending with the attack was something that was really useful for me as a fight director, as I got more involved in staging fights for theater.
Think back to maybe your first one or two classes. What are some things that stood out specifically of those classes that made you realize this is what I'm looking for? I'm definitely going to come back.
Yeah, it was, for Aikido, for me, it was the circularity, I think, of it. It was the flow of it that I was interested in. Also the focus on, I loved the focus on just tradition and discipline and respect. I loved and still do, of course, the sort of Japanese martial art kind of context of respect and tradition and sort of, just really being mindful when you enter the dojo and are really, bowing to one's partner and all of those things that come along with some of those martial arts. I really enjoyed, but also just the practice. I realized that this was a martial art that was, the sort of the energy dynamics of it was going to take, I was not going to master or even experience much like facility with for at least 3 or 4 years. This is going to take a little while for me to learn the sort of the techniques of this, but also the sort of underlying sort of principles of it. So it was a challenge, and I also just really enjoyed the experience of having sort of a daily, weekly practice that aligned with something that felt like I was being martial and learning a martial art, but also was not interested in at the time in like learning an art that was going to be purely about like kind of a harder style, a kicking, striking style, although I love those styles too. But I was interested in a style that was going to be able to be about harmonizing and sort of controlling one's response to an attacker, as well as being attacked.
Did your dojo ever get involved in the competition side of Aikido? And if so, did you take part in that?
No, it didn't. No, it wasn't involved in the style of Aikido that I practice. Is not. It doesn't have any sort of competition.
Okay.
I'd always that was probably one of the other things that attracted to me about it. Is I've never been like a competitive guy, even though I've grown up in a competitive, art form, theater, film, obviously being very competitive. I've never been passionate about competition. So
I'm the same way. I martial arts since I was 10, and I've done one tournament in my life.
Oh, really?
I've trained others for it. I've just never had the interest in competition myself. And the only reason I did the one is I had an instructor that essentially forced me to do it. So the only reason I ever did it, and he drove me to hate martial arts. So yeah. I tell everyone he was my John Kreese, if you get that reference. So
yeah.
Now, you mentioned your instructor, your sensei had also a background in Kempo. Do you know, was that like the Chinese Kempo? Was that Ed Parker's American Kempo? Which system of Kempo he had the experience in?
Yeah, I don't know actually. Okay. I don't know what style of Kempo he was interested in or that he studied. I think he got to be in Nidan and Kempo, and then he transferred over to Aikido early on. He went to Japan for 2 or 3 years, I think, and was an Uchideshi there for a while, and committed a lot of time to Aikido. Yeah, so I like the art form. I like the philosophy of it. I like sort of the movement of it. I like the options it provides. I like how it informs choreography, and I like how the basic philosophy obviously translates to how a fight director would work with actors. Yeah.
I only got to do Aikido for about 7 to 8 months when I was in college, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It wasn't an official school. There was an instructor at a local college where I was going. It was like I grew up, or not where I grew up, but where my kids grew up, where I lived and went to college. There were 3 colleges in the area, and you could go take classes at the other 2 colleges if you rolled at the one. And I found out the one had an Aikido class 5 days a week at 7 a.m. And I'm like, man, I don't want to get up that early, but I did it, as a college kid, 7-8 months getting, 5 days a week getting thrown around, and then ended up that instructor took a position in like Illinois and moved away. But I loved it while I did it, man. And I know there's another new one in town now. I've just never had the time to go back into it. But when I did it, I loved it. It's an amazing art. It's a beautiful art. And I wish I could have explored it more.
Yeah, it is a beautiful art, isn't it? I mean, it's just the movement in it is just so. I mean, a lot of people are like, "Is that real?" And it's like, well, when you experience it from really advanced practitioner, it feels absolutely real. But it is so beautiful at the same time, And at this point in my life, I'm also interested in now cross training in some different kinds of arts. I've done a little bit of work with. What is it? A little bit of the. What is the arts? It's been a little while since I was looking into it. Oh, Eskrima.
Ah,
okay. Looking into Eskrima and
nice.
And some of those arts. So it's been fun to sort of start looking at cross training and some other things a bit.
I wonder if that's the same school Colton has been taking some classes at. He's been doing some.
Oh, has he been taking
he did some. I think he did some Eskrima, because I actually sent him some of my Eskrima sticks for him to practice with. I think he's done. I can't remember if he tried some Krav Maga. I know he's done some Muay Thai, because he grew up in martial arts, until he was about 13. Theater took over his life, but he always kind of wanted to get back into it. And when he's been back home, we've worked out a few times and stuff, but he actually started looking for places to train this past year, and I'm glad he's been going to some classes. So
I just love those Filipino martial arts, I mean, I just am like, there's some really interesting pieces in there. I'm basically just always looking for a little bit of disciplines that I can use within my work as a teacher of stage combat or a fight director. Those disciplines borrow so much from modern boxing and wrestling and karate and Filipino martial arts, and so trying to sort of piece together a little bit of some of these other disciplines because so much of my background has been Aikido. I'm trying to sort of branch out and do other things.
Nice. So within Aikido, have you ever got into getting your second degree black belt? Have you ever got into the teaching side of Aikido and been like an assistant instructor at your school when you go back there and train?
A little bit. I've always wanted to teach a little bit more, but the challenge with teaching for me is that I do so much fight direction around the country that I'm home for 3 or 4 months, and then I head out for a month or two and do something. And so I'm a little bit on the road, a little too much to sort of keep a consistent class going. But I've done a little bit of teaching, and I find even with teaching my own sort of core disciplines of stage combat, it just helps you learn so much more about your own practice. So I'm looking forward. I hope I might be able to teach a little bit of Aikido in the future, but it's been a pretty busy time so far.
So when you're traveling, for your fight choreography and fight direction and stuff, do you ever go into and find a local martial arts school to work out at, or do you not have time usually?
I do. I try. I spent a good amount of time recently, and this was, I guess, not so recently, about 3-4 years ago in Sarasota, Florida. I was working on a production of Three Musketeers, acting in Three Musketeers, and there's a great Aikido dojo there. I mean, many actually, but there was one that I went to that was just terrific. And so, yeah, I try to keep my training up while I go. It's great to sort of see other instructors and train with other students. So, yeah, I try as much as I can, for sure.
Okay. And do you also try to seek out other styles when you're traveling too, to get more samplings?
I do. And that's actually something I've tried to do a little bit here, just in Salt Lake City. There's
a lot of schools out there. Yeah,
there's a lot of schools out here, and there's 3 or 4 really good Aikido dojos, and I've got sort of my own home dojo here that I train at and stuff like that. But there's a couple other really good places, and they're teaching kind of different styles. So I just think it's good to be diverse, you know, and just do as much, kind of put the ego away, put sort of what away. Learn something new. So put that in your toolkit.
Always good to put on the white belt again and learn something new.
Sometimes, totally. When I go and I train at other places and stuff, oftentimes I'm like, well, let me just put on my white belt because, I don't want people to assume that I know, something that maybe I don't actually know, It's
exactly.
Just treat me like a beginner. They'll find out that I'm not, but it's just treat me like a beginner and let me learn what I need to learn.
So is there, I know you mentioned a lot of Filipino styles and stuff. So is there a style that you would love to learn that you haven't been able to yet? Or maybe a couple different ones that you're maybe trying to find, or they're just on your list that you want to try them at some point?
Let me see. Let me do a quick search for some things I've been looking at actually recently. Some of the things I've been also really, really interested in is the you'll have to forgive me because some of the names aren't off the top of my head, but some of the, Russian special forces type, disciplines where I've had just a little bit here and there of people who have studied some of that.
Like Sambo or something like that? Or
some of that stuff, right? Yeah. I'm really interested in some of those flow drills of the Filipino martial arts, some of the knife and stick flow sort of disciplines. Man, there's a guy on YouTube that I watch all the time, and he's a Filipino martial artist, and he just shows all these really cool, knife disarms and stick disarms and just really direct.
Trying to think of some of the Filipino guys I know, obviously a legend would be Dan Inosanto.
Yeah, Dan Inosanto.
Oh.
There's an Inosanto Academy near me, or
I think that's the one Colton went to, actually.
Is that the one Colton went to?
Yep.
Yeah. So all of that stuff that they're training in, I'm just really interested in that stuff. I mean, but some of the stuff where you're gonna spar with people and you're gonna put on some headgear and gloves and stuff. I mean, I dig it, and I think the people who do that are amazing.
Yeah.
But I'm not so much interested in that. But learning, grappling. I'd like to learn some judo.
Okay.
I'd like to do some karate again. I mean, I was a kid when I did that, really young. I'd like to do karate again, but some of my striking and kicking, facility is definitely wanting, and so I'd love to pick up some of that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to send you a few links because I haven't interviewed Dan himself, but I've actually interviewed his daughter.
Oh, really?
Diana Leona Santo, who's Bruce Lee's goddaughter. I've interviewed her husband, Ron Balicki, who's one of the top instructors at Dan's school. And then also there's a gentleman in Minnesota, Rick Fay, that runs the Minnesota Academy, the Filipino Martial Arts Academy out here and stuff. And he was one of Dan's guys. And so some good interviews there and some good stuff. But yeah, Dan's on my list. I'm hopefully going to still. And every time fortunately to bring that up, and anytime we lose one of those legendary martial artists, like we just recently lost Chuck Norris, it's like, man, there's people I want to get, because I think now I've been doing the show 5 years, and I think 4 or 5 of my guests have now passed away, unfortunately.
Really?
And it sucks, but I'm so glad I got to have that conversation with them beforehand.
Yeah.
It's like, Dan, I'd love to. I've never met him. You mentioned the Russian martial arts. Back in '95, I did a seminar with a gentleman named Gokar Chavakian. I've never heard that name, but if you watch the old school UFC back in the '90s, he trained Oleg Taktarov, the Russian Bear.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, his main instructor. And I think he also trained, I believe he trained Ronda Rousey for a while and stuff like that. But yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff out there. And I when Colton first moved out there, I researched a bunch of the schools and said, here's ones you could check out. And here, I know he looked into, there's a BJJ school that offers like free classes to students, but the timing just never worked out.
Yeah, I've heard so much. I mean, obviously BJJ is just huge, and I'm just like, man, that just looks so great, and I know it would be just so good for me on so many levels.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not quite sure that that's my speed. But Wing Chun and Kali and Ilat, those kinds of things I'd love to do a little bit more of.
That's good. Well, hopefully you'll find more. So you mentioned a little bit like the knife stuffs in the Kali sticks and everything. So is there a favorite weapon you've trained with, whether it's through martial arts or even just through stage combat, a favorite weapon you like working with?
Yeah, well, let's see. I mean, the stuff that I do in stage combat, we look at everything from sort of longsword, and it used to be taught very much from a Western European sort of medieval sort of standpoint, and now we're looking at obviously Western European cultures weren't the only people or haven't been the only people who use something that looks like a long sword, or a broadsword. So I love working with all types of swords that we will see in any sort of theater or film production. Rapier and dagger, 18th century small sword, German or sort of katana-based longsword-ish technique. I love working within a weapon style that we call single sword, which is very much a sort of a Hollywood swashbuckling style of sword play that's kind of borrows from a lot of different disciplines, but is essentially theatrical in nature.
Okay.
I love working with staves, everything from the jo and the bow to, sort of things that are more quarter staff-like.
Mm-hmm.
I love working with sort of various knife techniques, sword and shield. So those weapon disciplines are really interesting to me, and I'm always trying to sort of find different approaches to them. But in addition to that, I'm looking at sort of empty hand techniques and wanting to continue to explore sort of a variety of empty hand techniques, because most of what I have is, in terms of my own stage combat work, is pretty standard versions of empty hand techniques based on boxing and a little bit of karate and a little bit of wrestling and aikido and joint locks and stuff like that. But wanting to sort of expand my sort of vocabulary there. But I think my favorite weapon disciplines are probably in the sort of rapier and dagger sort of Renaissance or Shakespeare period of time where rapier and dagger was having its heyday.
Okay. I got to ask, don't think I asked you this earlier or not, but have you ever had any experience with capoeira?
No, I never have. No,
okay.
It looks just really hard to me, man. I mean,
yeah,
it's like all that stuff, spinning like half on the ground and stuff. Am I thinking about the right art here?
Yeah, it's Brazilian and it's music based. So a lot of like handstand kicks and flips and.
Do you do capoeira?
No, God, no. When I was younger, I thought about it, but with my knee injury, I just thought. And what's funny is I actually found a capoeira instructor in North Dakota, just out of the blue.
Yeah.
He's a professor teacher at the college an hour away from me. And I just happened he had a post on Facebook Marketplace for capoeira lessons. I'm like, what? Because that's the one art I've never seen live. Like, I love Only the Strong is one of my favorite early 90s movies, and had the honor of interviewing the star of that, Mark Dacascos, and super nice guy, and talked about that. And I've interviewed probably about close to maybe 5 to 7 different capoeira instructors and students and stuff. And it's just, it's a beautiful art.
It's so beautiful. Yeah. You know, and I find all the martial arts beautiful in their own way, you know. I mean, they're all, it's just like, I mean, I always am impressed and inspired by the fact that, you know, I mean, obviously this isn't anything new, by the fact that it's like they are all martial, but they are all arts in their own way, you know. And I think that unique sort of combination of an art discipline, but it's a martial physical discipline, is like really inspiring to me. I just love the movement and the patterns that can be created, and sort of like how the human body can move. And I also love how how history, you know, repeats itself, you know, that it's like things that people were discovering in like 1450 and, you know, like Germany are some of the same things that we're working on in BJJ now. You know, it's just like really interesting things. Yeah.
I know that's one thing with this show. I love, you know, interviewing people from like styles I had never even heard of before I started. And I always thought I knew a lot about martial arts and stuff, but, you know, talking to people, I'm like, oh, I studied this style and this style and this style over in this country. And I'm like, I've never actually heard of them before, which, you know, for me, I actually got to interview someone who was an expert and an instructor with the shillelagh, the Irish stick. And totally. I knew nothing about that art before I feel like someone you should talk to this guy. I'm like, and I researched the art first, and then I talked to him, and that was really cool.
Yeah, it's cool stuff, man. Yeah, there's some, you know, when I go, there's these stage combat conferences around the world. There's one in Canada called the Paddy Crane Conference. I forget what it's called exactly, but Paddy Crane was this amazing, like, fight master who worked at Stratford Shakespeare Festival in Ontario, Canada, and just one of the like grandfathers, you know, like the grandfather basically of stage combat. Anyway, they've created this workshop in honor of him, and they bring in people. I went a long time ago. They bring in people from all over the world to teach, you know, all these kinds of different martial systems, you know, everything from Irish stick fighting to African stick fighting to, you know, modern, you know, sort of firearm training. You know, it's just really a wonderful world right now where there's so much cross-pollination.
That'd be something fun to attend. Even just me I don't do much with stage combat myself, but just to meet some of those people, and God, I could probably find some more guests that way too. So yeah. Well,
the martial world and the stage combat world, they're really sort of cross-pollinating. It used to be very different, but I just went to a conference in Chicago, and this great instructor, you know, was sort of reminding us, he was like, you know, stage combat, he was saying, is a martial art, you know, and there's some people who kind of will like think of them as two different things, but I do think that's right. I think it's its own sort of martial discipline. And of course it has a different set of like objectives maybe than other martial arts have, but it holds a lot of similarities, which I think is really cool.
I mean, even just up until maybe 30 years ago, a lot of people didn't even consider wrestling a martial art.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
You know, cause I remember the first time I realized that I was interviewing one of my guests. It was like my first year. And we were talking about how when he started martial arts when he was like 14 and blah, blah, blah. And then like a half hour later, he happened to mention sort of wrestling when I was 4. I'm like, well, why didn't you mention wrestling when I brought, he was like, that's not a martial art. Like, yeah, it is. Like you as a martial artist should realize it's a martial art. So yeah. And I've had a few other like guests that like, yeah, I would have never thought about that, but I heard you mention it with your other guests. So I guess I started martial arts when I was 4. So I'm like, there you go. Yeah. So yeah, I've always, you know, maybe not always, but definitely in the last 5 years, I've definitely considered stage combat a martial art within itself. And I've interviewed a handful of people, some very well known. I mean, if you've heard the name Anthony DeLongis.
Yeah, for sure, man. Oh yeah.
Totally. What a guest. I mean, he's one of the ones that man can talk, and if it could have probably been a 3-hour episode. I think we talked over 90 minutes. And it's such a cool guy. And I mean, I'd actually love to send Colton. He does like these camps at his ranch where he teaches like, sword fighting on horseback and bow and arrow on horseback and teaches the whip and everything. I'd love to send Colton for that. If I remember correctly, when I interviewed him, he got his start doing like stage combat or fight choreography at a theater in, I want to say like near Long Beach or something. Long Beach or San Diego, somewhere in Southern California. I've also interviewed a lot of guys who design weapons, whether it's for movies or for real. Like one guy who does prop weapons for movies and stuff, and other ones that design actual weapons for use and practice weapons. And
totally. Yeah, the world is full of these great, people who have just committed their lives to, sort of like learning, and teaching and studying and just their whole lives to like the act of storytelling with weaponry. It's really cool.
Yeah, it is. Oh, I love it. And it's, like I said, it's, as long as people keep saying yes, I will keep doing this and hopefully getting more interesting people and talking about that and stuff. So
awesome.
I love doing it. So what about now? I mentioned in the intro, you wrote a book. Talk about kind of what led to that and, kind of what it covers and stuff and when you wrote the book.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Oregon at the time working at the Shakespeare Festival, and my friends had written a series of books on Shakespeare, acting Shakespeare, and voice work and text work and things like this. And they said their publishers were interested in having this sort of like style of textbook that they had created. It's kind of how it's laid out and how it leads the reader through the work and stuff. The publishers had said, like, we want to expand into other disciplines. And do you know of anybody? So they approached me and they said, do you want to maybe make a proposal for a book on stage combat? And I was like, yeah, I mean, that'd be great. But I said, under sort of only kind of one caveat, which is that there's enough books that have been written, I think, on like how to do stage combat. And I felt like, what, my own contribution would probably be stronger instead of writing a book on like, well, here's how I teach stage combat. My contribution would be stronger if I incorporated it as sort of stage combat, sort of firmly within the acting process. So like, I've been an actor for a long time. I've been a teacher of voice work for a while. Worked in classical theater companies for a very long time. And so I thought I could write a book about how stage combat is sort of a tool and a really like core tool to understanding and helping actors more fully develop in their craft. It's sort of a total need for the actor to learn a craft. Stage combat can be used as a, really primary training tool. So I incorporate stage combat, aikido, and a system of voice work called Fitzmaurice Voice Work, which I'm an associate teacher of, into sort of a holistic approach to being able to use stage combat as a primary tool for teaching actors. It's really geared for like the secondary or college level teachers and students. And I brought out my sensei, Michael Friedel, to sort of do some demonstrations. At the time, one of my colleagues, Sifu Jerry Gardner, just a long time martial practitioner in lots of different disciplines, contributed to it as well. So that's basically how that was formed and was written. I've always been someone who's been really interested in integration, and sort of the similarities between things rather than like the differences between things. I mean, so often, when people talk about whatever it may be, it seems like our natural tendency as human beings will be like, sort of compartmentalize and like look at what the differences are between various disciplines, whatever those disciplines might be. I've always been like really interested in like, well, yeah, of course, different disciplines have different sort of styles and there's going to be differences, but I've always been really interested in sort of bringing to light what various similarities may exist. And so hopefully I think this book tries to do a little bit of that.
That's cool. And when was that published?
Published a little while ago now, I think.
Is it 2016? Is that right?
2016.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I just found it on Amazon, so I will definitely put a link for that out there in case people are interested. So
cool.
Nice. And I love that you're involved with the Fitzmaurice voice work because I've never done it, but I've heard it because I've been doing professional voiceover work for almost 30 years. And I've heard of that at voiceover conferences. I've heard people talk about it and stuff. And that's always kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a cool discipline, and it connects really well with all of these martial sort of disciplines and techniques as well. It's a discipline that plays really really well with other disciplines, you know. So it's been a really helpful and profoundly like informative experience for me to work in that field.
So do you know, and I haven't, the question just popped on my head, so I haven't researched it at all, but has anyone ever tried to actually set up stage combat as an actual martial art where it has like rank and stuff and you get certified?
Well, I mean, it kind of is actually
Okay.
set up that way. Yeah, it actually has that set up and has for, a long time. It doesn't have belts,
Right.
it doesn't have like ranked belts in that
Mm-hmm.
kind of way. But there's definitely all these different organizations definitely have a quote unquote sort of certification procedure where students test in a fight with a discipline.
Nice.
And then they have an adjudicator adjudicate that fight and that scene. And, students can achieve various ranks of title within, within these various disciplines. Then, of course, there's also certifications, as you mentioned in my bio, certifications as a teacher and fight director and things like that. But definitely students have the ability to become like combatants, active combatants, advanced active combatants, things like that, where they sort of have a similar sort of structure of hours and techniques that need to be demonstrated and hours that need to be, committed to before you can test and things like that.
Okay. And for you yourself now, has most of your career been around the stage, or have you done stuff on camera before, or?
Just very, very little. I was, born and raised in LA. I did a little bit down there, just a little bit.
Okay.
And then since leaving, I've done some commercials and I've done some other things like that, but very, very little, nothing really to speak of.
Okay.
I've always wanted to do more and have been interested in doing more fights for film. I've, of course, like taking workshops on, doing fights for film. And one of the first places I trained at, great place down in Southern California, the Academy of Theatrical Combat, run by Jan Bryant and Dan Speaker. And you should talk to those two. They're amazing.
Cool.
But they've a lot of fights for film, Hook, Army of Darkness, Three Musketeers,
Nice.
all these fights and stuff. So that's really one of the first places I got my start in. I trained with them for, 2 or 3 years. And of course, fights for film is similar, really similar, but different, than theater. So that was a great start. And so I'd love to actually take that training that I had with them and be able to apply it a little bit more in terms of my own work. But yeah, I haven't done as much as I'd like, but who knows what might happen in the future.
Yeah. And I've actually heard of that school. I think at least one of those names is on my list as a possible future guest. I don't think I've reached out yet. I know I've talked to, as far as like fight guys, Simon Rhee was on my show a couple of years ago. He's done a lot of stuff. I mean, he was best known for Best of the Best back in the 80s, but he's done I think American Horror Story and some other stuff. And I interviewed the guy who was the stunt and fight guy for Warrior, the series. That was
cool, man.
Yeah. That was a good.
Who's that?
Brett Chan. Brett Chan is his name. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
He was my 190th guest.
Yeah, Dan Speaker and Jan Bryant, man. They've run this Academy of Theatrical Combat in LA for years. They'd be great to talk to.
Okay. I'm actually going to leave myself a note so I contact them, because that would be fun.
Yeah.
So over your years of martial arts, is there one philosophy for you that stands out that's at the top of your list?
Is there one philosophy that stands out at the top of my list in terms of my interest in the martial arts? Yeah, I mean, I have been interested, as I've said, in sort of the practice of Aikido, taking care of the, sort of in the most like pure form of it, of course, right? Obviously there's variations to this, but in the most pure form of it, the idea of, at least as far as my understanding goes about this, Aikido being about the ability to take care of an attacker as well as taking care of oneself, and being able to be sort of non-reactive, not, or at least not overly reactive. And I remember I was listening to a podcast with an Aikidoist, many years ago now. I can't remember who it was, but he said something that I thought it was just like really cool to me. I'm basically a gentle guy, but yet I'm also like this guy who goes off and stages all these like really brutal fights in theater. I just got back from Great Lakes Theater, for instance, where I staged a production of Macbeth, where in this production, in every production of Macbeth, these murderers come in and they kill this child and they kill this mother and they kill the baby. It's like so much of my career as a fight director is staging all of these like really kind of brutal things sometimes, and sometimes it's about sort of Hollywood swashbuckling, but there's a lot of brutal things to stage. And so I was inspired by this guy saying about Aikido that it's like it gives you options. Like if a child were to attack you, if like a 5-year-old were to attack you, punching and kicking you, would you want to destroy that child with like a punch and a kick and a neck break, or would you choose to like put them into some sort of controlled hold, gather them tight and prevent them from hurting you, but also intend to not hurt them yourself? And he said, basically, that's what Aikido espouses. It's like if a grown man attacks you like they are a 5-year-old child, maybe we could also find ways to not necessarily, sort of destroy them, but to, sort of like help them see the error of their ways in a joint lock on the ground.
Nice.
So that's a kind of philosophy that's always kind of resonated with me.
Okay. I like it. All right. How about a worst martial arts or stage combat related injury? Have you had any bad ones?
Oh, it's a little PTSD now. Like, let's see. I mean, hopefully there aren't too many, sort of injuries that I can talk about. I mean, every once in a while there's something. Worst martial art or stage combat related injury. I mean, maybe one of them was like going to that Aikido dojo, and I use Aikido in this context with, sort of quotation marks. I'm not quite sure it was Aikido. But, in that second day, like dislocating this guy's shoulder and having him be like, no, it's all right, I'm fine, And so maybe that. I mean, there have been moments, though, in fight scenes on stage where, I've certainly gotten whacked. I remember I was in this big broadsword fight in a theater, and I got whacked on my hand, and I was like, I am sure my glove is filling up with blood. I was like whacked on the hand, and I'm supposed to have been killed, and I was lying there for 5 minutes, and I was like, I'm sure my hand is just like, filling up, my glove is filling up with blood, and I get off stage, and it's like a tiny little nick, and I'm like, so that's probably my worst, stage combat injury story. Knock on wood.
Okay, cool. All right, what are your thoughts on something like MMA or the UFC? Is that something you're a fan of?
I mean, I like watching it. I mean, I'm a student of basically every martial art.
Yep.
There's no martial art that I won't want to watch and learn something from.
Okay.
I'm just like amazed at their stamina and their ability to take hits and keep going.
Yeah.
And amazed at their technique. The thing that, and so I know nothing really about it other than what I've watched, but the thing that I always am interested in looking for are martial artists sort of like balance between like really skilled martial artists, their ability to balance what seems to me always two opposing sort of things, but I know it's not, but these two sort of energies of like relaxed energy and explosive energy. And how like really skillful fighters, regardless of discipline, are able to balance those kinds of energies is really interesting to me. So when I watch really skillful MMA fighters and people who are doing that, I'm impressed by their athleticism, but I'm also just like trying to look for like, where are they trying to relax, sort of energize relaxation within this fight, and where do they sort of let that energized relaxation sort of explode? So yeah, I dig watching it sometimes. Sometimes I can only take so much of that.
know? Oh yeah.
But it's interesting.
All right, I have a few fun questions we use to wrap up the interview.
Okay.
We were just talking about MMA, so let's say maybe it's a young Chris decides to get crazy, and you're gonna walk into that octagon. You're gonna fight in the UFC. What song is playing as you're taking that walk into the cage? What's your walk up music going to be?
dude, what song is playing? I mean, I hope like Eye of the Tiger is playing, but I'm 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 afraid that like I'd be playing something that was really cacophonous and just like about something about getting me the hell out of there.
At least 20 people have said Eye of the Tiger, so that's a good pick.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure nothing.
Mine's You're the Best from the Karate Kid, so that's my pick.
Yeah, totally.
I like it. Yeah. That's good. All right. Who are 3, 4, 5 names you'd put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
Oh, that's a great.
And this can be people. I have guests that just pick only people they've trained with, their personal instructors. I've had them pick legends of the martial arts, like, Fumio Demura and Gichin Funakoshi, and other ones are like icons like Chuck Norris, Bruce Lee, people like that. So it's anything goes. It's completely up to you.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, Aikido has been a huge influence for me. So Morihei Ueshiba obviously would be one. I think my sensei, Shihan Friedel, Michael Friedel would be another one. And then it would be like people that I've trained with in stage combat, it would be like a really influential teacher of mine, Gregory Hoffman.
Okay.
It would be another really influential teacher of mine, a guy named Fightmaster Jeff Kent.
Okay.
It would be like the founder, one of the founders of the Society of really influential founder of the Society of American Fight Directors, David Boucher and Eric Fredrickson.
Okay.
Let's see, are there any more? I mean, it's just so many people, man. Maybe just also, Dan Speaker and Jan Bryant, Randy Kovitz, B.H. Barry, some of my early teachers who still like inspire me. I feel like I have even though I've been a fight director, teacher of stage combat and stuff for probably 30, 35 years, but I feel like I have so much to learn still from and feel like a true beginner, in so many ways. So always inspired by those folks.
I like it. All right. How about a favorite martial arts book?
Favorite martial arts book? Yeah, if stage combat is also a martial art and obviously believe it is, I actually don't know that I have a favorite martial arts book, although I do have a ton of stage combat books in particular.
Okay.
People who I've really learned a lot from. But I think a favorite book that inspires me that sort of connects to the martial arts is this great book called Ego is the Enemy.
I've actually heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really, obviously there's some other just like super classic, martial art books about various things, and they've been inspiring to me, on lots of levels and in the art of archery. And all of that is just like incredible. But there's a great book called Free Play by Stephen Nakmanovich, I think is how you pronounce his last name.
Okay.
There's a book called The Invisible Actor by a guy named Yoshi Oida, O-I-D-A, a Japanese actor who's done a lot. A very thin little book, but talks a lot about sort of traditional acting techniques in traditional Japanese sort of training cultures, and he uses a lot of language that seems like taken right out of martial arts philosophy.
Nice.
And this Ego is the Enemy, man. It's just like a really powerful book that I am enjoying reading.
I'll have to add that one to my list. So, all right. This one you may or may not have an answer for. It's about 50-50 with my guess, but do you have a favorite martial arts video game? Did you ever get into gaming when you were younger? Or now?
Yeah. I mean, I remember the 80s. I mean, I'm 55, so I grew up, going to the arcades and, putting 25 cents in and playing whatever those like, I know there was some boxing game where you just were beating the living crap out of the other character.
Yeah.
It was fun. But I was also 12 at the time. I'm sure I would not think it was quite as enjoyable now, but no, I unfortunately, I'm not much of a gamer, so I don't have a favorite martial arts game.
Nice. See, I was the same. I did in the 80s, yes, and maybe a little bit in the early 90s. I'm 52. I'm a couple of years younger, but Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I remember like Karate Champ, and I worked at a Walmart in the early '90s when the video game systems really made it big. So I remember playing like Street Fighter and Tekken, while I worked
Yeah,
in the store. We're supposed to be working, we're playing video games. So
yeah.
nice. All right. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
Oh, well, I must admit, I loved watching Chuck Norris. I loved watching, I mean, I just loved watching all that stuff when I was a kid. I
Hmm.
loved watching, oh, what was that? What was that TV show? Kung Fu? Kung
Oh,
Fu? Is that what it was
in the
called?
'70s. Yep. David Carradine.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, with David Carradine. Loved watching him, and still I'm a fan of any movie where the martial arts, the whatever the martial disciplines that are being utilized can be really seen and appreciated, and you really see that the actor is like actually taking time to actually learn something,
Yeah.
the Bourne movies or the John Wick movies. It's just really interesting to watch some of these sort of techniques be sort of compiled by really talented and skillful practitioners.
As a fan of swords and stuff, you talked about a little bit. Were you a fan of the Highlander TV series in the '90s?
Yeah, I didn't, as much as I've been a fan of sort of swordplay for a long time. I mean, I watched a little bit of it, yeah, for sure. But I for whatever reason, I don't think I watched a lot of that
Oh wow.
series.
Okay.
But yeah, always have enjoyed, whether it's in theater or film or television productions, watching really skilled practitioners put together sequences that are athletic, exciting, and further the story.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot.
Okay. And you mentioned a few movies already, but a favorite martial arts movie? Is there just one that stands out?
Favorite martial arts? I mean, so many. I mean, I mentioned the Wick movies. Those are
Yeah.
just like it's just really interesting to watch. Sort of that storytelling. There's a great movie called. I mean, I tend to be really interested in historical swordplay type
Mm-hmm.
things, and there's a great movie called The Duelists.
Mm.
Harvey Keitel,
I've heard of
and it's
it. Yeah.
about these two guys. I think like in the 1800s who just had this long-standing, lifelong feud with each other, if I'm remembering correctly. And I can't remember if it's fictional or if it's nonfiction. But anyway, the movie just shows these two guys who just like every time they met, they would fight. And the great thing about the movie is that they're fighting. They meet at different times during their life, and they fight with different weapons. I think there's a small sword fight, 18th century small sword fight, and there's some sort of basket hilt, sort of heavier sword fight, and there's a pistol fight I remember, and it's
Nice.
just brutal and messy, and it's not glorified, it's not romanticized. It's just like, man, this is what this would have looked like. There's this one like small sword fight where they're just coming into on guard, and they're getting ready to like try to kill each other. They're
Mm-hmm.
out in some like rainy French field or something, and like one of them suddenly has to sneeze, and so he steps back and he like clears his throat, and he's just really gritty and real. And I've always been really interested in like what is the humanity of, like, what is the cost of various fighting styles that have cost people their lives, and or injuries and stuff. And of course, in my own field of theater storytelling, it's like that's sort of where the resonance is. And so I've been interested in seeing films which really bring that to life. Yeah.
Nice. I like it. All right. Final question. Now, this one doesn't have to be a martial arts movie. Any movie you've seen in your whole life, a favorite movie fight scene. And this one, people say anything from like Rocky and The Karate Kid and John Wick, Marvel movies, superhero movies, anything goes. Just when you think of an amazing fight scene, what's the first one that pops into your head?
Oh my gosh. Oh, what is that fight? I forget the movie. It's a knife fight. Oh my gosh. It's so like iconic. It's this knife fight with, I can't even remember it. I'll have to come up with a different one, but it's this crazy knife fight where they're just going after it, and and it's basically two special forces guys who are just like fighting on this.
Not Under Siege with Steven Seagal when he fights Tommy Lee Jones?
No, not Under Siege.
Okay. That's the first one I thought of.
Yeah, but I guess, there's so many. I mean, I guess I would have to say, like, I think I'll have to say The Princess Bride, man.
You're like the third person that has said that one. I'm guessing the big sword fight scene. Yeah.
Big sword fight scene.
Yeah.
It's like when I think of Hollywood swashbuckling and, just so iconic,
So
I mean,
good.
there's a million other, great fight scenes that come to mind in various films. And, I'm constantly like looking out for like, what, I'm working on this, this Macbeth production, and we'll research, sort of like Scottish claymore, medieval broadsword fights from, various films and stuff. So just so many that are so informative, but
yeah.
Princess Bride, it's been a million years really since I've seen Princess Bride, but I remember that made a huge impact on me.
So good though. And shout out to, Rob Reiner, rest in peace. I mean, that's just a iconic movie, and the guy basically directed my childhood. So that's,
yeah, totally, man.
Can't go wrong with that pick. Well, before I let you go, is there anything I forgot to ask you, or you just want to be sure we mention last minute, or anything else you want to get out there quick?
No, I think I'm good, man. It's a pleasure talking to you. Yeah, no, this is really...
This has been so much fun. I mean, when Colton recommended you, I think last year, and I'm glad we were finally able to make it work. And I love your story, and hopefully you'll get to study some of those other arts you want to. And hoping when I come out to Utah in about a month, maybe we can meet in person. So.
Dude, yes, absolutely. Like, please just if you have time, I mean, I know you'll be busy celebrating with your son.
We're spending a week out there. So we're getting out there the 25th, and we'll be out there till the 2nd. So I will have some time.
Oh, well, let's definitely get together. Give me a ring, and I'd love to meet you in person.
Awesome. That'll be cool. Seriously, this has been so much fun. I've truly enjoyed it. And I think the listeners are going to enjoy it also.
Awesome. Well, I hope so. It's been my pleasure. Honor, really. Great talking to you.
Wrap up today's episode by taking your own training to the next level with Martial Theory by Steve Perlman, the book that's redefining martial arts thinking. Find Martial Theory on Amazon today. Join the worldwide movement at martialtheoryu.com, where you'll find Q&A sessions, live events, and direct guidance from Steve himself. Use code EverydayMA for 20% off for life. That's martialtheoryu.com, code EverydayMA. Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.